Welcome to the Old Mac Gang podcast, or OMG, a podcast with a panel of longtime Mac Apple users who want to discuss the most relevant apps and services to age-seasoned users. I'm Marty Gensius, an Apple enthusiast and podcaster. I am a 67-year-old age-seasoned user who has collected a great group of friends across the Apple mugs. It's the mugs that are the Mac user groups that are how we're connecting in MacStock. So it's all great to have these friends here to talk about Apple services and apps and how they can affect those of us like us who are age-seasoned users. Let's see who's on the panel today.
Hello, I'm Chris. I'm 77. My first Mac was a 128K Mac in November 1984, and I spent 9 years in the Apple user groups in Dallas and Austin, and then I worked for Apple for 8.5 years and finished off my career with a university at the San Francisco Bay Area, and then I retired and moved to Tucson, and I've been happily a member of TMUG, the Tucson Mac user group, for several years, and that's where I met Bob. And I am currently using an M1 Mac Mini, an iPhone 16 Pro Max, an Apple Watch Series 6, and a 9th generation iPad. And Peter.
Yeah, I'm Peter. I'm where I will be 72 and a half on Friday. I'm from Bay Village, Ohio, not too far from Gary and Marty. I am an enthusiastic user of a large variety of Apple products and services. I have a current laptop, iPad, and iPhone, and fairly recent Apple Watch, and many accessories. I use all these in my daily life and to pursue most of my interests: hiking, watching films, enjoying music, and playing with math.
Hi, I'm Bob Wood, and I'm also in Tucson. I am a 70-something seasoned Apple user and have been in Mac user groups for over 30 years now, both here in Tucson and prior to that in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Marty?
Yeah, I'm Marty Gensius, as I mentioned, an Apple enthusiast. I try to keep up on all the new equipment. So I've got a new M4 Mac Mini. I'm doing this on a studio, second studio Mac that I have. I have MacBook Air, Apple Vision Pro, just a lot of the technology I really enjoy and have been a user, I think, since around 2006 when I wanted to start doing some podcasting, and it seemed like Mac was the better way to go with it. So tonight, is any news out that you've heard about? Chris, you mentioned something about a new iPad or an iPad Mini?
Apparently an iPad Mini, yeah. There was an announcement, I think, on the 17th, and let's see if I still have it here. Just announced A17 Pro, Apple Intelligence, and more. So it's apparently been announced and it's out there. I must admit I missed this, but and that was, I think, the big hardware news of the week. We also got a new beta of Beta 5 is now a public beta of 18.5. So for the iPhone, I've been using that.
Yeah, I'm running developer betas on everything except my my studio, where I'm running the public beta on it. And, I ran the developer beta without any problem on the Mac Mini. I just switched over to the studio this week just because it had been sitting here and I hadn't fully used it. And frankly, the Mini was running a little hot for me. Doing video processing and uploading and such like that, with all of that running, a lot of programs running simultaneously, ran fine, ran flawless, but did start to get hot and to the touch, particularly when I was doing the video editing for things like this. So I don't know of any other significant news. We're sort of in that pre-WWDC slump where we're not going to hear anything.
Yeah.
until we get closer to it. And then obviously after it, we'll have tons of news to talk about from that. I don't know if we're going to have much to talk about in terms of new equipment at that point. That doesn't generally generate new equipment, but we'll have lots to talk about what the operating systems might look like in the future. So with this episode, we're going to do probably a shorter episode than we usually do, but we're missing Gary tonight. Gary is feeling a little under the weather, and so he let me know a couple hours before show that probably better for him to sit this one out. So we hope that he recovers quickly from whatever he's got. I know he's said he was watching us on YouTube, so there are other folks watching us on YouTube, and I'll be happy to entertain any chat from them coming in and Gary coming in if he does have something to add to. But today's show, we're going to talk a little bit about canceling subscriptions. And there was an article that I sent out to you that you might have had trouble getting to because it was behind the Wall Street Journal paywall. But it was about how to kind of eliminate your identity information that's on the internet. And services that will do that. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. And then, so that led me to look for, when I looked into those services, it was like, yeah, it'll get me off all the name listings that I might be on, but it won't do what I want it to do, which is cancel subscriptions. I have the bad habit of, seeing something going, oh yeah, that's cool. Let me sign up for it. And then never getting around to using the software or using the service. So I am forever trying to remember subscriptions that I have and then wanting to cancel them. And I know there have been services in the past. There was an app that I think at one of our Mac user groups, Peter, Gary, and I, someone showed an app that you could put on and it would screen and look through all of your stuff to find out what your subscriptions were and suggest subscriptions that you might want to unsubscribe to. And I think it even did it for you. And some of the services now will do that. But I think what happened with that particular app was they were then caught selling information. So this is an active email address, we know, because they're signed up for us. And so it gave a black eye to the whole idea of subscription services. And the more I've looked into it, we have some links for you to look at. And maybe after we go through our talking, I'll run through the links quickly. But services have gotten a lot more complicated. They're asking a lot more out of users that I'm not sure I want to put in and give them information with. So we're just going to handle it without a service per se, other than what Apple provides. My first question to the group is, how do you manage your subscriptions? Both Apple and non-Apple subscriptions, because Apple subscriptions are good. There's some straightforward ways of dealing with it, but the non-Apple ones are the ones that are confusing. And have you used any subscription apps in the past? Or are you using them now to kind of monitor your subscriptions? So that's the first question. And we'll start with Bob.
Well, for me, this is a good news, bad news kind of thing. The good news is it's my wife who subscribes to Amazon Prime, Apple TV, and other streaming services. The bad news is, I think, that she uses Amazon to add other subscriptions, such as Netflix, BritBox, and Acorn, because I think it's much easier and cleaner if you subscribe through the Apple TV. As far as other subscriptions go, or my subscriptions, we're talking about this and it tells me, yes, I need to make a spreadsheet detailing all my other subscriptions. Some of them, but not limited to, Flickr, time tracking software, the Adobe Industrial Complex, and others. Uh, so I'm going to throw it over to Peter.
Yeah, I don't have any particular app that I use to manage subscriptions, but I do have a set of rules that I use when I initiate a subscription. First of all, if it's available through Apple, I purchase it through Apple. I like Apple better because they send you an email an amount of time before it's going to renew every month after month or year after year, depending what it is, and gives you an opportunity in advance to cancel. And when you cancel, unlike some places, the cancellation is not immediate. It's whenever your subscription would expire, which I think is a nice way to do business. Other subscriptions, and I have a lot, for monthly subscriptions, when I sign up, I set a recurring reminder that will remind me 4 days before the auto renewal. And when that reminder comes due, if I'm unsure, I mark it as okay, shunting it off for another month or year, and I kick in a 1 day recurring reminder. And hopefully I make a decision, this is worth it or not. And I look at how much I've used and things like that. And a lot of things I renew, but there are things where I go, oh my gosh, I haven't used this, cancel. And yearly subs, it's the same thing, except I do a recurring reminder 10 days before auto renewal. And I use that same dupe strategy. I also set every sub I have other than Apple to send me email receipts at each billing. So I'm getting dunned in my mail. You're spending this, you're spending this. And I have a sense of what I'm spending. I mean, I can look at the end of the year, my bank statements and credit card statements, have a group called subscriptions, and I can reassign things to groups if it happens to make a mistake. So I do bear in mind spending too much. And if there's something that really appeals to me, I go and find a couple subscriptions out there, in my reminders and cancel those before I sign up for it. So those are the practices I have. And I think they've kept me pretty much out of trouble.
Okay. Well, I pretty much use Apple's app, which for anybody who doesn't know about this is in settings. This is on the iPhone. I'm not sure, maybe on the iPad as well. But under settings, when you go to your Apple account or click on your picture, the fourth item down is subscriptions. And it also has the ability to not only go alphabetically by app name, but by price and renewal date. And the renewal date is very handy. So you see what's coming up. I usually get a reminder from, even Apple will send reminders, but also there are things like SmugMug, Ancestry.com, things like that. And they usually will send a reminder for the non-Apple one. So that hasn't been too much of a problem. And I funnel everything through one credit card. So that makes it easier because I check that every month and in terms of exactly what's coming through. The other added benefit of the Apple Card, and I'm not sure this is benefit in air quotes, Goldman Sachs has decided that every time one of my annual renewal comes up, they decline it, which is a real handy feature. Although I have to go back and apologize and say, okay, I approved it. Please go ahead and run the process again and it'll be fine. I have no idea why they're doing that. They didn't know either. So there you go. But I do watch pretty closely because some of these apps, you sign up for the New York Times for $1 a week and all of a sudden you're a couple of years down the road, you're paying $12 a month. And that's a lot, but the Times also delivers a lot. So, something to think of. And I do think it's a good idea for me, particularly in the streaming apps, because I don't watch a lot of TV per se. And I probably got more streaming apps than I need. But I'm going to go through my streaming apps and get rid of the ones that have ads or try to upgrade to the non-ad versions from the funds I'm saving that I'm eliminating other streaming services. So we'll see how that goes. But that's my plan.
Yeah, I'm a mess with this. I'll tell you. And if anything, trying to put together this episode helped me realize what kind of mess I have. I to start with, I whatever I can buy through Apple, I buy through Apple because one of the habits I do have is when things come up for renewal, even if I'm going to accept it for renewal, I go back and look at my subscriptions and go, well, let me find out what else is coming up for renewal. Just like Bob directed, we also will have a website link that will show you, listeners can find it within the show notes, and it will give you some idea of how to go through this in terms of finding those things that you have subscribed in Apple. Now, everything that I subscribe through Apple, I subscribe, of course, through my Apple ID. So when I go to look at my subscriptions, I can see what's coming up in renewal, how some things that I forgot that I purchased a month ago that are good for a year, and maybe I want to take a look at them and make some decisions. Or, yeah, I purchased them 3-4 months ago, and the year is up in 9 months, and I haven't touched it. So let me go ahead and set cancellation for 9 months from now. I can still use it, but I'm not going to be surprised by wanting to be charged again for an app that I haven't used. So I rely heavily on Apple where I can. The problem is, like Bob mentioned, I also am pulled into the Adobe vortex and do a lot of work with Adobe. And I have Adobe on too many computers. So that means I wind up having 2 Adobe subscriptions. One of them I get through my university, and I get some educational discount for that. And it allows me to put it on a couple of machines. And then the other, if I'm putting it on a laptop or I'm putting it on a third device where I might be using it, it costs me another subscription. And the problem is lining both of those up. So I know that this one's going to roll over this time and this one's not. And I have to find some better way to organize that. I like what Peter said about reminders and kind of being more diligent about reminders, even Bob's idea of a spreadsheet. So I have quite a few accounts like that. And particularly when I'm exploring new services or software, I do some presentations on AI, and I've got one coming up at MacStock. So I've been looking at different AI services, and yeah, I'll sign up for that. And before I know it, I'm getting notices from services that I hadn't realized that I was engaged in. So then I have to go and check and see, yeah, sure enough, I have an account with them. And sure enough, I'll have a bill coming in about 6 months if I'm not paying attention. So I am terrible at this, which is why I wish I could find a system that would manage all of that. And some of the systems I looked at last night in prepping for this, one of the top ones was chargeback. And when you explore these systems, you'll find the new ones, the ones that are really effective, need like your bank statement or your bank card information, needs a picture. It needs kind of proof that you are who you are. And that seems a little too much for me. And besides that, they're expensive. So last night I tried chargeback, and I just found the whole arrangement for setting that up kind of wonky. I went in, I put name and email address in and password and created an account. It said, "Oh, okay. Well, let us help you find all these apps that you have. Which email would you like to use?" And I had defaulted to Gmail. Well, Gmail is not the one that gets all the receipts. It's really my Mac mail. So I was stuck with them looking through my Gmail to find out what accounts I have. And it found some. But then when I said, "Hey, can I add my Mac email on this? Because you'll find a lot more." There was no way that I could see to either switch that mail out or add another email. So it was like I was dealing with a singular email search, which was problematic. Secondly, when I was signing up for it, it said $30 a month. I'm like, that's not what I thought your marketing said. And so I put the information in and I said next and next. But at one point, I never knew when they were going to charge me for that account because they had my GPay arrangement because I had done it through Gmail. And I'm like, when are they going to hit me for $30 a month? And I'm not sure I want that to begin with. So as I go through, then it's like, okay, $40 a month. I'm like, wait a minute, I haven't even agreed to the $30 yet. And so I finally figured out how to then delete it did find a series of stuff. I have to admit that. And I went in and I deleted some of it. But at that point, I said, okay, so maybe I lost 30 here. I just don't want to do this anymore. It's just because I hadn't put in all the personal identifying information like bank and bank card stuff in that it would need to fully look at my charges. And I didn't want to do that. So I went and deleted the account. And of course, what they then send me back is, hey, we can do $40 for the whole year. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. You lost me already. And then, when I unsubscribed, they said, now, wait a minute. Tell us why you're unsubscribing because we can offer it to you for the first year for $15. And then it's like, no, thank you. I want to get out of your system. And I think I received an email from them today, and I'm not going to respond to it. I mean, it's just like, please come back. It's like, no, I'm sorry. It was a bad first date and I'm not going back to it. So I'm reluctant to kind of look at these other systems because when you look at the descriptions, they do still want this kind of information. And then the thing that they say is you really got to trust the system that you're using if you're going to use this. And I think I've got to go towards Peter's system or, when I find out to cancel an account, when I get the bill for it for the next year, when it's like, we just charged your account. You've got another, thank you. You've got another year with us. And then it's like, okay, I know what today's project is going to be to not have a third year of this particular thing. So as I said at the beginning, I'm bad at this all around. So I'm going to hit you with question number 2. Any other ideas or tips you have for subscriptions and I don't have many more tips because you've heard it, but any other experience you regret of a subscription you forgot? Peter?
Yeah. What I was just going to say in response to what you were saying is there are banks now that are offering credit cancellation services as part of their banking service. So you might want to look at that with banks. And the other thing with regard to setting up a reminder system like mine, I was, when I was planning for this episode and thinking about it, I realized that I had not tagged all of those reminders. But as I go through, over the next year, every time I hit or create a renewal reminder, I'm going to tag it in the Apple reminder system. So I can just say, show me all of the subscription renewal reminders, and I can see those all in an instant. So that's something you might want to think about.
Those are good ideas. Like I said, I'm learning more from y'all who are doing a much more successful opportunity of working with this than I'm doing myself. So I'm going to head to Bob because Bob's got some ideas, I think.
Okay, one of the things I've heard is if you subscribe to something I'm just going to give this a try, consider canceling it the next day. And it'll run to the end of the subscription, be that a week, a month, or a year. And I think you can be assured that the company will remind you when your subscription is coming due. Please renew your subscription. At that point, you can decide whether it's worth continuing the subscription. Many of these places will offer you lower prices, as Marty just said, rather than have you drop the subscription. I've found that Sirius Radio, which I use occasionally but not often, I can get them for $100 a year rather than their retail of $250. And Adobe, I've got them down to $30 a month instead of 56 or more a month. But I also want to mention another subscription that I have never considered dropping for many years would be my mug subscription. And even though I'm an officer, I still pay dues. Peter?
Yeah, I had another rule I thought of that is part of a tip for subscriptions, which is I always do, as you said, the trial first. Then I go from trial to monthly, and I review, and I never start out with yearly. You know, no matter how valuable I think it is, you know, to pay a month or two as I'm double checking has more than broken even with when I discovered I thought I was going to use this. I'm not. I'm out after a month or two rather than after a year. With as far as experiences that I regret or interesting experience, I use a thing called Camo Studio Pro when I'm streaming candidate forum or a teacher training thing out to the net. I use it to control my iPhone, which is on a tripod. And when I upgraded from an M1 to an M4 MacBook Pro recently, that was one thing that I didn't deactivate and reactivate on the new machine. And there I was at an event, and my Camo Studio didn't work. And this program made me realize I have another 8 days to call Camo and straighten out and get my old machine deactivated and cancel my month-to-month subscription so that my year one, you know, the remainder of the year I still have kicks in. So that's something that when you upgrade a computer, sometimes certain subscriptions don't automatically allow you to use the software on a new machine. And I want to have an award, my 7th Circle of Hell award, to the Boston Globe because they often come to me and they'll give me an offer, you know, a great thing like $6 and we'll give you a year of the Boston Globe. And that's just like so unbelievable that I do it. And then somehow, you know, and I don't know if they mix up the date or I'm pretty sure it's them, but then suddenly I get a charge like 4 days before my reminder occurs. And then I have to call them. And the only way to cancel is to call them. And you know, you can sign up online, but you can't cancel online. And this is something that the great economist Richard Thaler called sludge. He wrote a very popular book called Nudge of ways that you trick yourself into doing things you want to do, like lead a healthier life. And the opposite of nudge is sludge. And that's all these things they put in your way of doing something they don't want you to do. And it's making canceling subscriptions, you know, near impossible. And I think, in my experience, the Boston Globe takes the cake for that.
Chris.
Well, the one comment I think I would add here is I'm extremely leery of any app that wants to touch my bank account.
Yeah.
Period. In a sentence. So much so that when our trash service said, well, if you're going to use a credit card, we're going to start charging you an extra $3 a quarter for the credit card fee, as opposed to giving us direct access to your account. And I talked about it with my wife because, you know, we're kind of stuck with the trash service, right? And there's no bargaining there. And, you know, to her credit, she said, well, you know what? Maybe that $3 is a worthwhile expense. And I think she's right. So I'm just very leery. There are very few people that I give direct access to the to the account, because something goes wrong, it can wreak a lot of havoc. And so I'll just put that provisor out there. I run into folks all the time that have stuff and like, oh, gee, I'm not sure. I think I have that, but I'm not really sure. And I just say, call them, find out. So that's sort of my comment there.
Yeah, I have problems with a lot of services only because I use multiple emails. And when I go to sign in, I don't know what email I use to sign in. So if I use the wrong email, it's like, no, you don't have an account. This is typified, I think, by the New York Times and the Washington Post. Both newspapers that I subscribe to, and I'm sure I have multiple subscriptions because one uses my Gmail, and then another time I signed up using my Mac Mail. And so I think I have concurrent running subscriptions, and I don't know how to solve that problem. The problem is 2 emails and using both emails to sign up for things. This also, I mean, that's bad enough. What happens too with me a lot is and this happened with Wired. Yesterday I was looking at Wired, and I have a subscription, online subscription to Wired since I've started doing these podcasts to try and get behind just the public articles. And look what else is in there. Well, the problem is Wired somehow, when my cache is cleaned on my browser and I go to look at Wired, it says, oh, you've already looked at 3 articles this year or this month, and you've reached your maximum for the month or whatever it is. It's like, no, I haven't reached the maximum. I have a subscription with you. And then I have to sign in, and sure enough, it acknowledges it. But it's that kind of frustration with subscription newspaper types of services and online services. The big one for me that's been a bad experience, and it's my fault. I'm not putting it on this company, but Grammarly. When Grammarly first came out as a service, I thought, this is what I need to assist me with my writing. And frankly, it was very good. It wasn't necessarily, the things it pointed out was not necessarily the things I wanted to do, but it made me look at my writing and go, do I need to fix this here? Well, sure enough, do I have a Gmail Grammarly account or do I have a Mac Grammarly account? I do not know. But I do know every year I get a re-up on Grammarly, and I can't figure out how to shut that thing off. Now, particularly since Apple and all sorts of other services like ChatGPT and other AI services can solve those grammar problems with you, and Apple's building it into Apple Intelligence, I don't need them. I mean, I think there was another one called ProWriter, which was basically a Grammarly that did the same thing as Grammarly. And I had a subscription to that at one time too, because I was trying different ways of doing it. For the life of me, I've got to get off the Grammarly train. And no offense again to the product, it's great, but there are so many ways in which the technology has overshot the usefulness of those particular apps. Chris?
Yeah, when I can't figure out which email address I've used, and I'm guilty of this too, I will go into Apple Mail and I will search on proverbially Grammarly and
Right.
see what comes up and which addresses I was using, which one is current. And if that doesn't work, there's a wonderful product from the nicest folks called InforClick, which is like a giant FileMaker-like database that indexes all your mail, and it'll find anything. So it's wonderful for doing deep searches in Apple Mail. So it'll only work in Apple Mail, and it still works. It's been the same version for years, and
it's called
it can be very
InfoClick?
handy.
It's
InfoClick,
okay.
and
All
I'll
right,
send you a
put-
link to it for the show notes.
We'll put the link in the show notes. Any other things, folks, you'd like to chat about with regard to this? Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, I've found that in passwords, I keep my login and password for most of the things. So it'll tell me which email I've used in most cases. And the other thing, I had a question for Chris. I like to use iCloud for one-time email addresses when I'm registering for something because I can mute them later if the place becomes obnoxious. And I know that's possible with some credit card companies. Is the Apple Card do that? Will they give you a one-time credit card number?
Yeah. Or you can
I
Okay, if they
believe
do
they
that-
will.
Yeah.
you can switch and get a new number anytime you want.
I don't mean switch and get a
But-
new number. Some credit card companies will just say, "Do you want a number for one charge?" And you just get it, and it's a one-time use. And then when they go to renew, that credit card's no good, and they'll have to ask you to update your credit card if they don't want to tell you in advance it's time to renew. And I know people who use, and I don't know if it's, I don't want to name a company, but I have a couple friends who do things that way.
Peter, I think it can be done. I'm not sure. I don't know if I can find that quickly enough real time, but we could check into that and see. It is very handy, by the way, what you're saying to be able to do that.
Yep.
But
Stay
I use
tuned next
hide my
week.
email a bunch. Yeah, stay
Yep.
tuned next week. Love it. I use hide my email all the time for stuff, including the Meta products, by the way. But we got to be careful what we do.
You can change the security code pretty quickly with the
Right.
Apple Card, but I'm not sure about just numbers for significant. We'll take a look at that and report on it in the next show at the top of the
The
show.
thing to be careful of is that you don't change your number, because then
Yeah.
you'd have to go back and change it across to everything that uses that card.
Right.
Yeah, and
Right,
sometimes
so-
I'm forced to. Sometimes, if they repeatedly, with the trick that you pull, Chris, they repeatedly try to charge something, and if I'm not paying attention to it, by the time I finally get to it, like later in the day, the card's dead, and I have to get a new number and start that whole process over again. Great for protection. That's what I want. But sometimes I just don't get to this. Is this considered a legitimate charge or not? And I don't see it on my phone, and I don't respond to it, or I don't respond to it. And then it's like, well, if this is not a legitimate card, then legitimate charge, then we think your card is at risk, so we're going to issue a new number. And then you have to do what you said. Make sure that the numbers. But Apple also is, I think, good about seeing that with recurrent charges and making some of those transitions for you. But yeah.
And the thing that can be a nightmare with this is international travelers. If you're in, overseas, and it's not, one of the big name countries, and all of a sudden you have a problem, and there are things that we can do here with Apple that we can't do when we're overseas. And so you can try to go find an Apple store. And anyway, life could get kind of complex.
Yeah, I've
that
done enough.
situation. So that's
I've
where-
done enough traveling with, well, not just with the Apple Card, but with credit cards in general, where I took one with me overseas, and the hotel that I was staying at, it ran it once, and for some reason it didn't work. So they ran it a second time, and for some reason it didn't work. And then they ran it a third time, and that effectively shut the card down. So I had to contact the card, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we saw their stuff. We don't know why they didn't say it worked, but when 3 charges came through from that country, we decided to shut your card down." So yeah, but that's another story, or that's another show maybe. But any other things to say about subscription? I guess I should take some time to at least show some of the things that we have with websites. This website is the basic Apple support website. If you want to cancel a subscription from Apple, it has directions on how to do that on your iPhone, iPad, or Apple Vision Pro, how to do it on your Mac. and even how to do it on a Windows PC if you're doing that. And then I found an article, 6 services to help you cancel your subscriptions. This comes out of AARP. It's a couple of years old, but I looked through some of these services. Bobby was a subscription tracker that was very popular. But again, I think the cost is a bit, and also the personal information that you need to share with them. And then Pocket Guard is another one. You have to link your bank and credit cards to it. And then Trim was another one, Truebill. And then they suggest a lower tech alternative like spreadsheets and calendar reminders, as we've talked about. And then a good article here on how to find and remove particular, and they have links to some of these on how to cancel subscriptions, how to find it in the Apple Store and Google Play Store, how to cancel Amazon Prime. So this was an Engadget article that came out, just about a month ago. And then U.S. News and World Report, track and manage subscriptions with these 8 apps. Rocket Money, you hear a lot of advertisement for it. One of the things that they do with these services is they offer the subscription cancellation, but they also offer debt negotiations. So you can get them to negotiate some debt that you have with something. And the way they make their money in that case is they take a portion of what you negotiated with them in terms of debt relief. So you'll see that with some of these. And I don't want to use this service for debt relief or for negotiating my debt. I just want to use it for canceling subscriptions I've signed up with. And track my subs. Some of these I might go back and take a look at. And then the top 5 personal subscriptions and how to choose them. Bobby is again mentioned, Truebill, Trim, Outflow, and Butter It. I've never heard of Butter It if you're in Canada. So there you have some ideas and some reading. If you're interested, you can find this in the show notes of the podcast, as well as find it in the show notes of the video cast. So you can get the links to all of these articles for that purpose. Anything else or final things, folks, you want to say? All right. Hearing none, just want to announce Macstock 9 is here for 3 days in July 11th, 12th, and 13th, 2025 in Crystal Lake near Woodstock, hence Macstock, coming up in Crystal Lake, Illinois. And we have an exclusive coupon for folks who want to get $50 off. You can use the code PodTalk50 at checkout and save $50. Go to the website macstockconferenceandexpo.com. The conference will be, you'll get more information from the site there. You'll get the links to the hotel. You're going to start seeing presenters and presenting topics coming up on that site as Mike Potter puts the site together. It's exciting. It's fun. Bob will be there. I'll be there. Gary will be there. My son Will be there as we are going to be giving a presentation together, and that'll be fun. So as far as a wrap goes, let's make it a wrap for this episode. Our next live episode will be Wednesday, April 30th through YouTube, where you can watch this crew at youtube.com/@oldmacgang. You can always pick up the podcast or video later if you missed the live show. Share it with your friends in your Mac user groups. We were visiting Mac user groups this week. We were in Mac user groups, and we were telling them we talk about Mac user groups on this show, and so support us too. the Apple University user group was one where there are a lot of user group contacts in there from different user groups. And so we hope that they will help kind of champion this show and also join us if they want to join us with this part. Our music bed is by Philip Gross, Marrakesh, courtesy of the Free Music Archive. More information about this podcast and others can be found at the website, thepodtalk.net, where you'll find information about this show and other shows that we produce under the podtalk.net banner. Thanks to the group, missing Gary this week, but Chris, Peter, and Bob here this week. And thank you for being part of the Old Mac Gang. We'll see you next time.